we're looking at the second trading day of the current week as we get into the 50th day of the month of March. Of course, technically, it's the second day. But again, let's check back what Monday looked like across some of the markets we cover in Africa. You've got Transcorp Power listed on the Nigerian exchange on Monday, 7.5 billion ordinary shares listed at 240 naira per share. The stock ramped up maximum 10% on the day. The parent company, Transcorp Group, also eked out roughly 10%, that's 9.94%. The Transcorp Power listing added roughly 2 trillion naira to Nigeria's market cap, and that was a very heavy trading day in Nigeria. The all-share index went up 0.1% because we saw declines in some of the major stocks, such as MTN and Dangote Sugar. Let's get onto the BRVM. The West African markets in Ivory Coast was up by 0.2%, that's 0.20%. The EGX 30 came in stronger Tuesday, on Monday, the second day of its own market week, by 5.11%. The market was just very sluggish, but positive on Sunday. But Monday was a whole lot bigger. The Nairobi stock market started the current week also in the green territory. The NSE all-share index was better by 12 basis points. Then, of course, when you look at the GSE, and that's a negative 0.2%, roughly 0.25%. The GSE fell at 72,633. The Zimbabwe stock market was negative as well on Monday, just as we saw an upside to the share price in to the stock market in Ghana. The all-share index finished in the green territory. Then that's just a summary of some of the markets here in Frontier Africa. What's making the headlines? Let's just get into it. Big news that Somalia joins the East African community, expanding the frontiers of the East African community. If and when Ethiopia joins the EAC, that will take the East African community to be the biggest economic bloc in Africa, pushing ECOWAS aside, which is the largest economic bloc right now. And that would also make the size of the economy of East African community next to West Africa. And that's the good news as we have. But we've got a couple of other news as well, because Kenya says it's looking to review some of the recent tax introduced by the Ruto's administration to support low-income earners in the country. Just as President Ruto and the parliament signed that new bill that will allocate more funds to the counties. 30 billion shillings is what was announced by President Ruto just on Monday. In South Sudan, President Mayardit says the new headquarters of Nile Petro has been opened in Juba. That's about $30 million. And also good news for Kenya's commercial banks. Again, as Moody's Investor Service on Monday released a new sector overview report that says the latest grey listing addition of Kenya by the Financial Action Task Force, which tracks corrupt and money laundering processes around the world. Adding Kenya to that list was no good news for this East African economy, and that could have negative impacts on Kenyan banks. They've got to be worked out very quickly. Tanzania and Ethiopia said they have a new agreement that will boost trade in agriculture and energy between the two countries. The World Bank is looking at tourism and key sectors of the economy to help Rwanda grow around 7.2% between 2024, 25, and 26. While the DRC, the DR Congo, says is providing initial funding to start refining cobalt and copper within the economy in Central Africa. Of course, now the DR Congo is part of the East African community. So let's take it to West Africa. And of course, you've got a big news on the Nigerian exchange yesterday. First listed in the new year, Transcorp Power, which is the second subsidiary of the Transcorp Group that's listed on the NGX. Transcorp Hotel was listed just a few years ago. Now the power company has also been listed, bringing to 2 the number of power generating companies listed on the Nigerian exchange. The first company was Geregu Power, owned by the billionaire businessman and investor Femi Otedola. That was just about 2 years ago. Transcorp Power has just added its own weight to the market, bringing roughly 2 trillion naira to the market yesterday, targeting 500 billion naira in revenue over the next few years, and says he spent roughly $250 million to retool the Transcorp Power, which was bought from the Bureau of Public Enterprises just a few years ago, and now it's made good on his promises to take the company to the market and that happened on Monday. Airtel Africa says it's bought about 491,000 plus of its shares in a buyback program from Citigroup Global. That's part of the share buyback program that Airtel Africa started on the 1st of March. And African Prudential, which is one of Nigeria's largest financial services in terms of registrar securities market, says Catherine Nwosu is the new CEO. She's the first female CEO of that services company listed on the Nigerian exchange. And of course, we've got the news over the weekend that OPEC Plus members have decided to extend their voluntary 2.2 million barrels per day cutback into the second quarter. And that sort of tempered oil prices on Monday. Here, still in West Africa, Sierra Leone is looking at primary deficit, which was into 1.8 billion Sierra Leone in the third quarter ended September of last year. And finally, Afreximbank has made good as the top financial company in organization in Africa as far as providing loans is concerned, as a book runner, syndicated loan, whatever. The Bloomberg list just released shows Afreximbank is at a top runner. And that is one good news for this leading DFI on the African continent. Let's look into Southern Africa. And today we're expecting South Africa's GDP numbers to be released. Some estimates, according to Bloomberg, to be around 0.2%. That should take the total full year 2023 GDP growth for South Africa to around 0.6%. Of course, that's not cutting it for South Africa, the most advanced economy. There's a whole lot more work to do. And of course, all of this, as we see the run-up to the general elections called for for the month of May by President Ramaphosa. South Africa's factory activity, however, gave some good news on Monday, as we saw the factory index expanding to 51.7. That's an expansionary level from a contractionary 43.6 in the month of January. Global asset manager 91, of course, with big services listing on the South African GSE, says it's floated as South Africa forecasts evergreen infrastructure credit fund on the market, deepening the offerings that are available to those who want to trade such assets on the South African market. In the meantime, Zimbabwe's president, Emmerson Mnangagwa, has highlighted climate change impact at the Ministers of Finance, Economic and others conference are taking place in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is hosting that particular conference organized by the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. But no good news, as it were, for President Emmerson Mnangagwa and about 10 other government officials who had been blacklisted by the U.S. government. Joe Biden, U.S. president, just signed an executive order on Monday, that's yesterday, placing some, removing the emergencies support for Zimbabwe, and now putting further pressure on Harare to do a whole lot more in terms of corruption and human rights abuses. The US Treasury made a formal announcement of that on Monday. And Namibia's beef exports to Europe was about 80%. As part of the as the percentage of the headline total for the month behind us, which was January. In Malawi, that's the month previous. We're now in March. Then, of course, you got Malawi's trade down 6.2%, roughly 495, roughly $500 million US in the fourth quarter. That's the final quarter in the December of 2023. Let me walk you through the North African corridor for those economic investment in business. Headlines this Tuesday, Egypt's Minister of Finance is looking at the country borrowing, or the treasury borrowing, about $14.8 billion from the local market in the current month, while Belton says he's signed of Egypt's first $30 million syndicated factoring deal for Redcon properties. And Morocco is reporting about 25% upside to its foreign direct investment, about 2.5 billion dirhams in the month of January, while Algeria is looking to invest about $50 billion in its hydrocarbon sector over the next 4 years. A similar story in Libya, another oil-producing economy in frontier Africa, announcing $17 billion investment to boost its own oil and gas production in North Africa. And those are your headlines as we start the second business and markets day of the week. Do have a great day, everyone. And of course, you can watch this show again on our YouTube. It's free. You can subscribe also to all our other shows. Go on our social media platforms and, of course, follow us and send us your comments and observations. We would like to hear from you. Have a great day.